I want to start out this way by asking you this question. Do you want your relationships to improve? Anybody?
Yeah. Always.
Thought so. Maybe in your marriage with your kids, even with a difficult relative. Do you want to begin thriving? Anybody?
Yes.
Anyone into like, I want to thrive in life, not just kind of like, but thrive in life. Anybody? Okay, all right. Do you want to experience joy at a deeper level? Anybody?
Yes.
Anybody? Okay,
Yes.
good. We're on the same track here. Most importantly, do you want to find fulfillment in finding great purpose in advancing God's kingdom? Anybody? Okay, all right, this is good. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you to press into a key instruction that God gives us over 20 times in His Word. This instruction is so essential that Jesus told His disciples, I am giving you a brand new command. Just one new command. And that got my attention. If Jesus is going to give just one new command, this is probably pretty important. Probably pretty essential. He gave His followers just one new command. And that command, again, has to be super important, super pivotal, super essential. And it is this. In John 13, starting verse 34, He says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Did you notice that in these two sentences, Jesus said the same thing 3 times? Like He's really, really trying to get our attention, like, skyrocketing. And He's like, I'm trying to get your attention. I've said it 3 times in these 2 sentences. Those 3 powerful words contained in Christ's new commandment are love one another. Love one another. And the great evangelist Paul, author of most of the New Testament, continued to repeat this essential instruction over and over again. Romans 12:10, love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. 2 of Christ's closest disciples, Peter and John, continued to make this command a centerpiece of instruction to the early church. They highlighted this so many times in their writings. For instance, Peter wrote in 1 Peter 4:8, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. John wrote in 1 John 4:11, beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. Are you getting the drift here? That this could be super pivotal, super essential, super key. And of course, Jesus highlighted this instruction to love each other as the most essential thing, second only to loving God. Let's visit Matthew 22. And one of them, a lawyer, asked Him a question to test Him. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And He said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments depend all the law and the prophets. So, hopefully you're all tracking with me so far that this thing, love one another, this command is super pivotal. Jesus highlighted it over and over again. Paul highlighted it. Peter highlighted it. John's highlighted it. It's like, okay, it's got my attention. Why is this so important? As I was contemplating this with God, I felt like He laid out so many reasons why this love one another command is so pivotal and powerful. So let's walk through them. First of all, because God created us to give and receive love, which means we will experience great fulfillment and joy in doing this. Let's go back to the words of Jesus in John 13:34. He said, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. Notice that Jesus pours out His love into us and then tells us to pour out that same love to other people. We were created for this. We were created for love relationships. Have you ever noticed that you experience great joy when you pour out love to somebody else? We always think, well, I'm going to feel the greatest joy when someone loves me, and that's also good. But have you experienced the joy that comes when you actually love someone well? You give them a gift, you serve them, you spend time with them, you speak their love language, whatever, and doesn't it kind of make you feel joyful inside and fulfilled? Yeah? Am I getting some nodding of heads? It does that for me. Because we were created for love relationships. And I know sometimes we think, well, I don't really have anyone to love. Oh my goodness sakes. Oh my goodness sakes. Look anywhere around you. People are starved for love. Some people in your own home are starved for love. People in your neighborhood, your next door neighbor, your coworker, who seems always a little sour-faced and irritable and grumpy and really not that lovely. They might need your love. There are so many people walking around, people right here at SOS. There are people here that need your love. And you will find great joy and fulfillment when you step into that. Another reason why this is so pivotal and powerful, because when we imitate the extravagant love of Christ, the world is shocked and attracted to that kind of unusual love, and therefore many will be drawn to Christ, and he's so glorified in that as people are drawn to him. John 13:35, by this all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. And here's what God brought to mind that I think he specifically wanted me to tell you. Have you ever known a family, it could even be a family on TV, as portrayed on TV, like, I don't know, whatever, Leave It to Beaver family or whatever, and you saw them showing great love to each other? So think of like a TV family or a family that you actually know, and it seemed like they were so loving to each other. And didn't you think to yourself, or I know I've done this in the past, oh, I wish I had a family like that. Have you ever experienced that moment where you're like, oh, I wish I had a family like that? Well, how about if we portray that that's how God's family is? And people are like, oh, I want to be part of that family. I wish I had a family like that. If we show love for one another, we are going to be that family that people are like, oh, I wish I had a family like that. And we're like, well, come on in. There's room for more in our family. Get the picture? Oh, yes. But here's the thing. God gave us free will. I don't know if that was the smartest move, but he gave us free will, which means that we can hold back love, we can hold grudges, we can be critical of others, we can ignore people who are struggling, we can look down our nose at prodigals, we can focus only on what we think will make us happy. You can do that, we can do that, but that's how the world acts, and no one's going to be attracted to God in that way. But people around you, including in your own home, will be attracted to God if we start loving the way that Jesus loved. He was incredibly patient and humble and giving without expecting anything in return. I struggle with that sometimes. Anybody else? I'm like, I want to be loved and then I'll maybe love you back. But Jesus said, I'll go first. I will live extravagantly without expecting anything in return. That kind of love, wouldn't you say, is kind of unusual? Kind of maybe even shocking. And maybe that's going to draw people to Christ when we start loving the way that Jesus loved. Would you be willing to be a radical love shocker? Like, when you're around people that seem kind of unlovable, or they're kind of irritating or annoying, even the people in your own house or your neighborhood or your coworker, would you be willing to be a love shocker in that moment and think like, wait a minute, I'm going to shock this person with how well I'm going to love them? I wonder what would happen if we were like love shockers. Like, I'm going to strive to shock you with the extravagance of my love. I think it would turn the world upside down. Maybe that's what Jesus had in mind by this command, like that we would turn the world upside down, shocking them with our extravagant love. Another reason this kind of love one another, is so pivotal, because this kind of love opens up the door for healing in broken relationships. And it paves the way for those relationships to actually thrive. Let's go back to Peter's words in 1 Peter 4. He says, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. This means that extravagant love says to that other person, you may have sinned, but my love is big enough to cover that. My love is bigger than your sin. My love is big enough that I can forgive any offense and pursue a restored relationship with you because you are important and valued. My love is tenacious and strong, and no sin is big enough to block my love for you. Do you communicate to even the difficult people in your life that no sin is big enough to block my love for you? And now this doesn't mean that you endorse their sin or enable their sin, but are you willing to communicate this extravagant, tenacious love that often brings healing in relationships? I want to go back to a story that I've told you recently, a testimony of an elderly person, an elderly relative in my life, who recently came to Christ, and God used me to bring the message, to bring the gospel to them. And this person was my abuser throughout my whole childhood. And so I'm an unlikely candidate to want to even speak to this person, be kind to this person, let alone share the gospel with this person. And I know that it would have never been effective for me to come share the gospel if I was like, well, you don't deserve me to come talk to you, you heinous person that I totally hate, and rightfully so, but you're going to burn in hell if you don't accept Christ, so bye. I don't think that would have worked really well. But I came in a spirit of love, and honest love, because people can tell whether you're sincere or not. I had forgiven this person. I had actually been praying for blessing for this person. And it took a while for God to get my head turned around straight, so I could actually love this person, give up the resentment, give up the bitterness. And I approached this person with gentle love. In fact, I actually told this person, I love you. I had never said that my entire life, and they've never said that to me yet. But I actually said, I love you, and I want to know that you're going to be in heaven someday. Can I talk to you about Jesus? And it was through love that relationship began healing. And it was through love that person actually said yes to the invitation to accept Christ. It's all about love. Let's get to our next reason this is so pivotal. Because this kind of unrelenting, gracious love draws prodigals back to Christ. Remember the story of the prodigal son in Luke 15? The son thumbs his nose at his dad, takes off with a bunch of the family money, and squanders it on immoral living, probably doing everything sinful under the sun. But the dad never gave up on loving his son. He had that tenacious, strong, durable love. I'm not giving up on my son. And he embraces the son with open arms when he comes back. Let's pick up the story of the prodigal son's return in Luke 15:20. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. The father loved his son with an everlasting, durable love. And I sense God is asking us, do you display an everlasting, durable love to the people around you? What does durable mean? It means it's strong love and it never, ever gives up. If we show disgust for prodigals, will that draw them back to Christ? But if we've communicated that our love is an everlasting love, they're so much more likely to eventually come back into that relationship with us and with God. And in praying about this, I sense that many prodigals have wandered from God because they've never understood the love of God. Does that resonate with some of you? Think of a prodigal in your life. I can think of several. And I feel like God's showing me that they've never understood God's love. So how does a person sense the love of God? Well, they get into the Word and read about everything Jesus has done and go like, whoa, God must really love me to have sacrificed his son Jesus for me. But another huge way that people come up to understand God's love is through us, because we are the hands and feet of God. When we reflect God's love through kindness and mercy and care, that is showing God's love. Will you be that person? Will you be Christ's love in the flesh, in your words, in your loving smile, in your kind actions, in your durable love that never gives up? A fifth reason that this love one another command is so pivotal, because we will experience God's love more deeply as we seek to love others well. Now this is like a benefit to us. I get this from 1 John 4:12. It says, no one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us and his love is perfected in us. Whoa! If we love one another, God abides or dwells in us and his love is perfected in us. And maybe you feel like you've never really understood the Father's love, but perhaps that's because you've been withholding wholehearted love from people around you. Maybe you should test this little instruction in 1 John 4. Look at that verse again. If you love one another, God's going to dwell in you and his love's going to be in you. maybe if you seek to extravagantly love others for the next few weeks, maybe you're going to sense the Father's love for you at a greater level. That would be kind of cool. And one last reason, I'm sure there are more reasons than this, but one last reason that came to mind for why this love one another command is so pivotal, because this kind of love communicates value to broken and insecure people, which helps them overcome that insecurity to boldly step into their God-given purposes on this earth. God has created you to encourage fellow believers so that we can all be used by God to advance His kingdom. Let's explore Ephesians 4, starting at verse 11. It says, "So Christ Himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers to equip His people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith, in the knowledge of the Son of God, and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching, and by the cunning and craftiness of people and their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of Him who is the head, that is Christ." Do you see the connection between love and effectively serving God? Here's what I know from personal experience. When people hurt us, maybe if you've been hurt in the past, or when we didn't receive love from the people who should have loved us, we carry deep heart wounds. Some of you in this room have deep heart wounds. The devil, who is an opportunist, comes in and starts whispering to us that we are unlovable, that we have no purpose, that we should be consumed with depression and self-pity and resentment. And when we listen to those lies, we can't be effectively used by God, because what are we doing? We're instead drowning in self-pity and resentment and depression and pulling the covers over our head and say it's a bad world out there, and you're not being effectively used by God at all to do anything important. But when a believer comes in and starts lovingly speaking truth to you, it puts the lies to death, and we begin to heal and thrive. And now with the knowledge of God's love and with the love we sense from other believers, we have the fuel to boldly step into all the purposes for which you were created, all of your spiritual gifts. I was thinking about this past week. I was kind of contemplating again, that season that I had with Raul, which was such a beautiful season of like 17 years, and how much I grew and my faith skyrocketed, and I was healed from so many childhood wounds. And I thought, oh my gosh, Raul was so loving, and his family was so loving. Like Raul was carrying out God's command to love me well. Like he was doing the loving one another command really, really well. He was making me feel cherished and loved and valued. And you know what happened as he kept on doing that? Loving me well, doing the loving one another command? My heart started to heal from all these deep childhood wounds. And I started to really realize I actually have a little bit of value. I'm actually loved and cherished. And you know what happened? As I started to listen to the truth, it drowned out the lies, and I was able to start getting courage to boldly step into God's purposes for me, and voila, fast forward, I'm here, teaching God's Word. That would not have happened without someone loving me well, loving me enough to drown out the lies I had believed for so many years. Could you be the same person in someone's life, where they've been listening to lies of the enemy, they're carrying deep childhood wounds perhaps, or maybe wounds from adulthood, and you're starting to love them so well and speak truth to them lovingly that they start to rise up out of the oppression and the muck and the mire that the devil had them trapped in, and they can step into their purposes to advance God's kingdom. That's something that all of us can do with people in our lives. So what does loving one another actually look like? Well, first of all, let's just get past this first notion. Love is a choice, not a feeling. I know in our culture, and if you watch all the romantic comedies and such, we feel like, we love when we have this bubbling feeling in our chest and we're exploding, and we're like, Thumper in the Bambi movie was Twitter-pated. We wait to be Twitter-pated before we do anything. It's like, I will wait till I feel all this oozy-goozy love, and then I'll do something. And God's like, no. I don't think he ever mentioned being Twitter-pated in the Bible ever. He's like, could you just choose to behave in a loving way? So again, we can't wait till we feel this before we start demonstrating love. In fact, we must tell our emotions to just step aside and shut up sometimes, right? Because sometimes our emotions are like, they don't deserve a cotton picking thing from me. Like, I'm going to make them suffer for the way that they annoy me. Like, whatever, right? But no. We tell our emotions to shut up, and we actually decide to be loving toward others. So here's where we're going to park for just a moment. We find God giving us an exact description of loving one another in 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. And I know some of you are tuning out like, oh, they always say this at every wedding ceremony, blah, 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 blah. Well, no, not blah, blah, blah. Like, what if we were to apply these instructions in 1 Corinthians 13? Isn't it funny how, for instance, there are women who've attended Squadron of Sisters for like 10 years who will come up after 6 or 7 years and go, I just thought of something really interesting. Maybe I should apply some of the things that are in the Word. Good idea, right? And so even though you might have heard 1 Corinthians 13 at every wedding ceremony you've been to and read it umpteen million times, it does no good if we don't apply it. Ding, ding. This is just your revelation for the morning, aha moment. Like, oh, maybe we should apply 1 Corinthians 13. Well, let's read it. It describes loving one another. It says love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And I want to look at that same description of love in the Amplified Bible, which kind of fleshes out the concepts in a little more detail. It says, love endures with patience and serenity. Love is kind and thoughtful. It's not jealous or envious. Love does not brag and is not proud or arrogant. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not provoked nor overly sensitive and easily angered. It does not take into account a wrong endured. It does not rejoice at injustice, but rejoices with the truth when right and truth prevail. Love bears all things, regardless of what comes, believes all things, looking for the best in each one, hopes all things, remaining steadfast during difficult times, endures all things without weakening. And you know what's really interesting about all that I just read? It's not a feeling. It's not a feeling. It's not a feeling. I just thought I'd say that 3 times to get your attention. Or maybe even 4 times. It's not a feeling. It's not like, well, I won't be angry this time because I don't feel like I'm going to... It's just like, no, I'm choosing. I'm not going to let this anger me. Can I do that? Can I boss my feelings around like that? I think I can. I can do it. I don't feel like being patient. Can I do that? Well, yes, I can. I'm choosing to be patient. See, like it's a choice, not a feeling. So let's just break this down real quickly before we finish. Let's look at all the elements here. The first one is patient. Patient. What does that look like as I'm loving a difficult person? It means I don't focus on their flaws, but I lovingly pray for God to continue transforming this person. That's patience. Because they're not perfect yet, and neither am I. So I'll be patient because God's working on both of us. Kind. What does that look like as I'm choosing? Not based on feelings, I'm just choosing. That means I'm going to look for ways to actually bless this person. Maybe practically or verbally. Even the difficult person, even the difficult coworker, even the difficult relative. I'm like, I am going to look for ways to bless this person, even if it's just shooting them a little text of encouragement. Not jealous. This means that I actually choose to rejoice in other people's blessings. Instead of going like, well, I wish I had. No, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you. I choose to be happy for you. I'm bossing around my feelings. I'm going to choose to rejoice with you and be happy for the blessing that you're incurring in your life. Not arrogant. Ooh, this is a sneaky one. This is a subtle one. Because what this looks like is often self-righteousness. I'm better than you. You just don't get it. You just don't do it the right way. If only you were more like me, because I'm pretty amazing. in my humble way I'm saying that. Yeah, I mean like, okay, so not arrogant. So this means I try to carry myself in a way that says I don't think I'm better than you. In fact, I'm going to be honoring you above myself. I don't think I'm better than you. I struggle with this sometimes, apparently, in my marriage. I was just told that last night. Yeah, so I'm just keeping it real, that I pretty much, because I've lived a long life, so I know how things should be done by now. And I can't help but tell people how it should be done because I've lived a long life. Maybe he's lived a long life too, but obviously I know best. So probably you should do it this way. And he actually told me, I don't need a mother. Oh, epic fail by the wife here. Yeah, okay, I'll try not to be your mother. You can change your socks as often as you want to. It's okay. Yeah. Anyway, but I was subtly conveying, like, I know best. I'm better than you. I've got it all figured out. I don't know what your problem is. Like, that is repugnant. It's probably repugnant. So loving one another means not acting better than, or that I know better than, and that I'm better than, I'm holier than. Not rude. That's the next element in 1 Corinthians 13. This person, when you're loving one another, you're not rude. So you don't speak rudely to other people. You don't point out their flaws. You don't criticize. By choice, not by feeling. See, my feelings say to do all sorts of things, but I'm like, shut up, feelings. I am choosing to love well. Another element, when you're loving well, you do not focus on self and what you want. You actually think of how to bless the other person. So again, not self-seeking. You don't focus on self. Instead, you think of how to bless the other person. Next, not easily angered. Do you take offense easily? I know many of us do. But we choose not to take offense. We choose not to take offense. Say, like, I trust God with this. We keep no record of wrongs. Oh boy, we could probably do a whole lesson just on this one element here. We keep no record of wrongs. This means we refuse to keep replaying in our mind what the other person did. We refuse to keep dwelling on how other people hurt us or treated us wrongly. We just refuse to park on that. We refuse to keep on replaying that. No, I'm letting that go. Rejoices with what's good and right is our next element of the 1 Corinthians 13 instruction on love. What does that mean? It means we point out what's good in other people instead of what's wrong with other people. Wouldn't our conversations be so much more uplifting if, you're sitting in the hairdresser chair there, where there's just a gossip fest if you're in like a beauty shop or whatever. What do they call them these days? Beauty parlor, whatever. And usually if you're in a big one, you hear all this gossip going around and you know what they're all doing? They're all pointing out other people's flaws. Have you ever noticed that? Telling really, unflattering stories about other people. Yuck! What if we were to be extravagant in our love and all we're doing is pointing out good things about other people? Looking for the good things in other people. Wouldn't that be nice? Protects is our next element. What does that mean? It means we don't tolerate other people bad-mouthing or treating others poorly. Ooh. We just don't tolerate it. We're like, I'm not going to be part of that. Trusts. Because love trusts. That means we assume the best instead of the worst. Oh boy. Yeah, how many of us have been caught in that little cesspool where we assume the worst about people? I do this all the time. I'm telling on myself. I have to hit myself in the head here, stop doing that. Because I tend to do that. I'm like, well, I know why they did that. And then I assume the worst possible motive or whatever. It's like, no. Loving one another means I'm going to trust you. I'm going to assume the best unless proven otherwise. I'm assuming the best intentions. I'm assuming the best motivations. Hopes, because love hopes. That means you trust in God to bring about good even in challenging relationships. You hope. And perseveres. Perseveres. This means you don't give up on people. You don't give up. It's kind of linked with the one right before, hope. You hope. You pray. You trust in God that He's going to keep moving, and you persevere. You don't give up. on the relationship. You might even be estranged and have to have boundaries for some reason with someone, but you can still persevere in hope, persevere in prayer, and persevere. There might be a reconciled relationship or at least a friendly relationship in the future. Persevering. What kind of world changers would we be if we started loving one another like this? In our families, with our co-workers, in our neighborhood, in our churches. Oh my goodness sakes. It would be shocking to the world in a really good way. And I think a lot more people would be drawn to Christ. Can we try? Can we tell our emotions to shut up, to take a back seat, and I am going to choose to love you extravagantly as Jesus loved me. Let's change the world.